to Women's Voices Without Borders podcast. I'm Mariam Janan, and this podcast is brought to you by AHJ organization with the support of the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs. Today, we are celebrating the first international forum of AHJ organization, and this is the second day of the forum. Now I have a special guest with me, Mrs. Frances Guy, the president of AHJ organization. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much. I know everything was busy. This is the end of our forum. So I would like you to tell me about the results in general, about the panels and everything happened in these couple days.
Thank you very much. It's been a very overwhelming in many ways couple of days. It's been fantastic to see so many wonderfully inspired journalists, and I'm slightly sorry to have left them in the middle of hearing these great Iraqi journalists telling the story about how they do their environmental investigation and all the very different things that they have discovered about what is happening in different parts of Iraq. I use that as an example because it's very kind of down to earth. It's a very community level way to finish what has been an event which has started at some of the highest levels, talking about women, peace and security and international conventions and how we should be implementing them and how journalists can hold governments to account on implementing them. And we talked about Chad and the Republic of Congo and Afghanistan and problems in Syria. And we didn't forget Palestine or the Yazidis, but we talked about these grand things and the role of female journalists in reporting all these very important events. Yeah. But equally important is what journalists can do to reflect the realities of what's happening at a community level. And that's what we're hearing about just now. And we're hearing about how climate change has affected things like water buffaloes and dimensions of Iraq that need to be known to Iraqis, but also to the outside world. And that is perhaps a little touch. It's a really great example of the touch that women journalists can bring to life that is different perhaps from other journalists. Right. And I think that's what we've been celebrating over the last 2 days, is the fact that women journalists have a very special role perhaps in how they transmit the information, but also in how they investigate the information and how they can have reach into societies that's subtly different, perhaps more sensitive, but in a positive way than other journalists can have. So I think that's what we've been celebrating and helping, because we brought together journalists who've benefited from the programs that Aide Humanitaire Journalism has done, in Iraq and in Yemen in particular. But we have other journalists with us here from Syria, from Palestine, and we've all been able to share different ideas, different challenges, to understand that there's things that are shared, but there's also an awful lot to learn from each other. So it's been an extremely rich 2 days, I would say.
So how do you find the diversity in general when you look at it from a distance?
The diversity across the journalists who are here? That's an interesting question, because in some ways there's a lot that is similar in the fact that, for example, this morning we talked about the challenges of artificial intelligence. Yes. And arguably those are the same challenges that journalists, and not just female journalists, but perhaps particularly female journalists, are facing all over the world in terms of extra harassment online, how you deal with it, the problems of having personal information suddenly exposed to the world, and exposed in a very malevolent way, done deliberately to undermine you, to undermine your confidence, to undermine your place in society. Right. Perhaps a realization that for women in this region, that is even worse. I know many women in public life in the UK, for example, already have dropped out of politics, maybe not dropped out of journalism so much, but certainly dropped out of politics because of online harassment.
Right.
But then to understand and hear from people here in the region responding to the panel, which was a little bit Western oriented perhaps, but a lot of response from the floor saying you have to understand that there's even more issues that this means for if you're exposed in such a way in societies where there are questions of honor, where your family are also touched as well as you personally.
Yeah.
So I think some of those dimensions have really come out, but they're shared in many ways across the region.
Yeah.
And issues about reporting conflict, we've seen how that is shared perhaps between Iraq and Syria and maybe even more so in Gaza, but the difficulties of reporting, the difficulties of what should be the kind of core of journalism in terms of verifying facts, but how you do that in some of these contexts. So I'm not sure about diversity. There's an awful lot that's shared, I would say.
More than that's just the diversity of their where they come from or their mindsets or like the regions that they are from. It's all about the experiences and what is different and similar in their experiences and their professional work.
Yeah, absolutely. What is similar in their professional work, as I say, what we've seen in this community level reporting, if you like, is how the skill set in terms of getting the information, trying to get official responses, trying to decide your story in the first place, just setting out why you choose these stories is a wonderful example to everybody, but it also shows how some of that is a shared experience as well.
Right. Yeah. I have a question. I don't know how to shape it, but let me just try to. The situation of what is happening right now in the Middle East, especially, and in the world in general, I think it helped that the journalists remember more the difficulties and the problems to share them. So I think this is maybe a positive point that highlighted their point of views and what they are facing right now. So do you agree with that?
You mean because the world is focusing on the region?
Yes.
The world's always focusing on this region. I don't think that's changed in 200 years, frankly.
No, right.
So maybe the means of communicating has changed, but this has been at the heart of this region's at the heart of many global concerns for a long time. But because we were discussing artificial intelligence, but we're also discussing the speed of information and what that means for journalists in terms of trying to verify facts when you're under a lot of pressure to put information out, when there's a lot of people putting out false information. And maybe that's the... Sorry.
It's totally fine.
Maybe that's part of the challenge in the region at the moment, because of some of the politics of it is there's an interest in putting out a lot of false information for political reasons. Therefore, there's even more importance on journalists getting to the real facts behind it.
Yeah.
But that becomes more difficult for practical reasons. Your need to verify what's real and not real is a new talent, arguably. Well, there's always been lies, but the speed of it and the way people can create it is perhaps new.
Right.
And then there's political pressures. There's always political pressures on journalists. So how do you... We didn't talk about that so much, maybe, about how journalists need to be independent as well as everything else.
Well, I think the girls in the networking space and the time that they could have talked about it between themselves. So last question, I don't want to go a lot for this discussion. I don't want it to take long. I want you to tell me if you feel that it's you're satisfied with the results of the forum and the topics that were covered.
I think the topics that were covered have been excellent, actually, frankly. So because we've talked about key issues that in terms of reporting in conflict, in terms of reconstruction post-conflict, the real challenges in somewhere like Syria right now. But then we've talked about artificial intelligence, which is top agenda globally, frankly. And now we're talking about climate change and how to report on climate change in a region of the world, which is one of the regions most affected. Although I think I would challenge what was said. I think the small island states who risk completely disappearing are arguably more affected than this region. But that's fine. That's why we're having these debates, you know. But the point is, this region is very affected by climate change, and it's very important that journalists play a key role in helping people understand the why, but also what they might be able to do to help.
Yes. Mrs. Francis, thank you so much for being here with me. You're the president of AHJ organization, and I'm very glad I got to cut you a little bit to tell us about the results of the forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the audience. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.